Welcome back. The next part of this film then, or the next part of this instruction series, we can look at the data now and let's start getting rid of the things that we don't want. So if we read here under this section, the data, we start to get rid of this excess. We don't want to get rid of it, we just want to get it out of the way with for now, because we want to focus on the things that are of interest for our analysis. And there are two layers that we're interested in. They are the layers for roads. So everything else that isn't a road we can get rid of. There are lots of layers here. Well, not get rid of, we can just turn them off for now. And so as you can see here, the road layers are found in this övriga vägar, other roads, and the roads layer, just the main roads. The orthophoto can be used as a background layer. We will take that in later on, I think. You can put it in now if you want, but later on when we're editing this data, we might want to understand what these layers are, what these objects are, to see if they're actually correct, whether they join up, whether they should just cross each other, that sort of thing. But we also have other layers. If we look here, I'm suggesting that you can maybe keep some of the background layers from the actual map itself. I think in order to illustrate this more clearly in this film, I'll just turn everything else off. So we just go through and we turn them all off. We don't need those sorts of things. Power lines we'll get rid of. We will get rid of that as well. And there's not much. We don't need the road symbols, we don't need buildings. That's one we do need. We don't need buildings, thank you. These two are the ones we need. Everything else we'll just turn off. And then we can get rid of that as well. And that leaves us with, that didn't go either. There we go. So there are our roads. That's our road network. These are the two layers, other roads, övriga vägar and roads. So that's got us our data. Those are the ones we're interested in for now. And we can see they've still got their styling, but we've lost all the other information. So that was that step. And now we need to start looking at the contents. So we're talking here about SQL queries. If you remember from the previous lecture on SQL, how we can search for information. And there are two main methods that we're going to use here. Or essentially it's one method, but one is adaptive with negation. So I'm suggesting that we could, in theory, look for, we mark a layer and say, well, look within this layer, look for several different types of object that we might want. But then that becomes this long list where we have to say where the detail, the type of thing is this, or the type of thing is this, or the type of thing is this, or the type. It's repetitive. The list becomes very long. It's easy to make mistakes. So a better way to do this is to say, does this particular quality can it be found in this list? So you still have to enter all of these types of objects, but you don't need to keep repeating this command, and we don't need the or all the time. It's just if it's in there, it's good. The alternative method we're going to use is to say if it's in this list, it's not good. So it looks for everything in this list and says everything that isn't one of these. So we'll be using both of those in our selection later on. But we need to understand, we need to find out what it is that we're looking for to begin with as well. So what I want you to do is to examine the metadata that is provided with this. So I want you to open up this FAST PDF, or there's an English version of it as well. So that we can find in the documentation, and we can see here we've got in both languages. We can go with the English one for now, as I'm giving this in English. And it looks like this. The Swedish one is exactly the same except in Swedish. And we have a long list of contents. And it will be quite a chore. We can look here. The other roads layer is there and that line is there. We could actually just click on that. Or we can do Control F and search. And that would also give us, would take us here. So either way, Control F and search, or we can just click in the table of contents and look for things. And then we get this description of what these different codes mean. So the descriptions are in English. We have new names given for us in English, but the coding that is stored in the file, if we were to go to this vägar and we look in the attribute table, this is all just it's the same data file. Nothing has changed. We've just this is the Swedish version. If we were to open up the English language lyrics file, it would be the same content in the attribute table data data table, but we've just these words here in the contents would be translated into English. That's just a matter of the styling. So we can here, if you don't speak Swedish, you can use this English language version and try and get some idea of what these things are. Cycle path, that as we're going to be investigating cycle paths and where we can cycle within this area, seems pretty useful. Footpaths, we can cycle on footpaths, even you're not always supposed to. Sometimes this might not be that appropriate because they tend to be running tracks and they're not always the easiest to cycle, if we're assuming that our cyclists are the average cyclist rather than some rather adventurous mountain bike type. We have to make decisions. All of these decisions are going to vary depending on the situation. So this is how we can find out information about these different road types. We'll just pull that down a bit there, and we'll go back to our instructions. So we've found out how we can find out what these things actually mean and what they might be capable of doing. Now we need to select the data. There are two main ways of doing this. So if we go to arc like this, we have our two road layers here. Which way around do I suggest you do it in the instructions? I don't want to confuse you. So we go to, when we're doing this, selecting the data, we're going to start with a VL layer. And then, so we're mark VL, and we need to then go to select. There's we're under the edit tab, select, and we want to select by attributes, like that. No, I made a mistake. Even I make mistakes. There we go, there it is, select by attributes there. It's under the map. Select by attributes, and that pulls up this eventually. Obviously, you don't want to be in too much of a hurry when doing anything in arc. There we go. So we've pulled up this select layer by attribute, and then we need to, this is the layer that's going to be active, because that was the one we had marked, and then selection type, new selection, we can click on this new expression. Now it is set at the moment to look under the FID column. If we look here, the FID column was just this ID column that was created by when the shapefile was created itself, and it doesn't contain anything particularly useful. It just contains unique ID numbers, which are necessary for the database, but for us they're not of any huge interest. So we go back here. We don't want to use that column because that's not useful. We want this detail type column, detailty. And so we've marked that out, and we're actually going to go to this SQL section here. Because we're going to be feeding in SQL, click there, and at the moment it just says where the detail type, the detail type, is blank. That's not a query that it's going to complain about, probably, unless they've added some extra intelligence, but it's not going to do anything for us. So that's not really what we want. And our investigation of the properties of these different layers suggested that we can take everything but these four types. So this is motorways and ferries and stuff. We're not going to be cycling on a ferry. That's not of any practical use for us. So if we just we can copy that, or we can actually copy the whole thing. Let's just try and copy all of that anyway. There we go. That should work. I'm going to do Control C, we go over to there, and we can paste that in. And we get this little green tick here, and so it tells us that it is valid. Now, just because it's valid doesn't mean that it's going to give us what we want. That's something we need to be careful of. As I pointed out before, it's when it's just said data type equal to quotation marks, it still said it was valid. It was a perfectly valid logical query, just not going to do what we want. Now I'm saying that what this is going to do is it's going to look in this column, this data type column, and it's going to look for these 4 words. And if it finds that 4 word, it's going to say, yes, found it. And then it's going to go, I don't want that. So not that. And then carry on. And anything that isn't in that list will be kept. Anything that is in that list will be discarded, so to speak. So now we get to here and we can run our expression. So we're selecting the data. Once the query has been run, you will find that they have been selected. So we click on run. And this shouldn't take too long, and we can see lots of stuff has been selected, and even some bits that aren't terribly appropriate, like these on-ramps for the motorway. I've suggested that we can just leave them on there for now. We could deselect them. We could do a manual deselection of these. On the other hand, given that they just die, they don't go anywhere, they're not likely to affect too much of our analysis, and I will say now that they're not going to affect our analysis terribly for the present, but they are important to remember. So all of these blue lines are the ones that have been selected, but obviously our SQL query was somewhat crude, and we've been left with these. We've been left with these lines because according to the map, these are the same types of roads as other roads that we are interested in perhaps using as cyclists. Potentially not as well, because they're quite busy roads, but they are cyclable roads. So what can we do then? Well, that's the selection has been made, and we now need to save the selected features. So we can right click here, and then we go to data, and then export features. It looks slightly different than ArcMap, but similar principle. So these are the features, the input features. This is the source for exporting. This is where it's going to be saved to, as in the location for the file, or in this case it's going to be in a database, so it's going to be a data table. And then the output feature class, this is the name of the layer we want to create. So we can call this, what did I suggest in the instructions? VL subset. Yep, that's pretty reasonable, I think. VL subset. You could, in theory, create a long layer name telling any other user what exactly it is. But let's not do that. We know what it is for now. Let's just click run there. And that's done. So now we should have our new layer created, and it's been added up there. And if I clear everything, click on clear up there, and then here we can even actually remove that. We can see that all of those lines are still there. In fact, if I remove the Riga, we can see that we've now actually managed to select all of those roads. So the next step then was to do a similar process for our Riga, other roads. And those more observant of you may have seen something interesting there, that when we right-clicked on this and we went to data and then export features, there was this little window here which tells us something. We will look at that. So this, we're now going to export features. We haven't done any selection yet. We haven't selected any particular set of features. We're going to call this one VO subset, which is quite logical, I suppose. Subset. And then we're going to click on new expression. And then we find that we have our SQL query again. So rather than having to go via this select by attributes tool up here, we can actually export directly with a selection of the data, and we want to take the code from here. This is the one. We could copy that if we wanted. We could take that instead, but I'm going to claim that this is better, just slightly more convenient. And we can see that it's correct. What would happen if I were to remove that parenthesis? Would it complain? No, it didn't. No, it doesn't like it. But now if I test that, it likes it. So it's valid. So we can see that it's valid. We can now actually just export this. We've set the input features as being our other roads. That's where we started from. We right-clicked on it. We're going to save it to our database, the project database that's preset when we opened up when we created the project. We're going to call it this VO subset, and this is the query we're going to use. We're going to search for only those objects that are in this list, or whose description of their type is in this list. And we're going to save those. So that's we're down here doing this one. And then we've actually managed to create or get the data we need that we're after to begin with. So we'll just click on run there, and then that shouldn't take too long, and then we've now got that. So we've actually managed to get both of our data sets up there. We can do this for now. So these are our two data sets that we're going to be basing our analysis on, but unfortunately they are in two different files. So now we need to combine them. We need to look for the merge tool. We need to merge these two files together. So we then go to Geoprocessing, click there, and we can look for here merge. There we go, there's merge, and then the input data sets. We can merge that, and we can merge that. And then the output data set, we need to make sure that we are in there. Output data set, and we're going to call it, what did I suggest we would call it? Roads. Good name. Good name. There we go. There's a question as to what we actually want. How much data do we want in this? We can actually, if we would like, remove some excess information that we perhaps aren't terribly interested in. Combine them into one layer called roads. In the field maps section in the geoprocessing window, you can see how they're to be merged. 4 columns on each file that share the same name. So maybe we don't really need all of those. So we can actually go here and we can merge rule first, VO type, and when we look at these, the tal type, we don't need both types. We don't. Yeah, I mean, we can start editing. We can start adding these columns as we like. For now, let's just to skip over that. We can just run that, and then we'll end up. What we end up with then, to illustrate the point, is we end up with repeats of information in places. So we have created our data set, and we now have all the information we need to start working. And we now need to start doing the analysis. Let's do that in the next video.